Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now, Keith Wood is with us. You're there?
I am here, Joe, but I seem to be looking at a chair in the corner and not you.
Well, we'll try and fix that for you. I'm looking at you and you're looking very formal this evening, I must say. Very sharp.
Well, every now and then, just for you, Joe, I decide to dress up a little.
This is like the BBC back in the day where they would wear suits even on the radio.
I used to have great fun with the fact that I didn't have to wear a suit in the BBC because my neck was too big. But now that it's gone down to some manageable element, it's okay. There you are. Now I see you.
Hello. I'm not in a suit, but we're here anyway. Good. So look, we'll get your thoughts on the Wales game in a moment. It does strike us, we were just chatting here today, that one of the big stories of the World Cup is that we have our captain and hooker on the plane today heading out for his final few games. And it strikes us maybe you're not the worst person to talk about that. There's a hell of a parallel there. What were your thoughts as you flew out to Australia in 2003 as a 32-year-old, knowing that this was this wonderfully exciting thing, and also, probably sadly, that the end was nigh?
Okay, I'm going to correct you. I was 31. I was in 32 for another few months after it. I knew it was my last chance. I didn't tell anybody. So whereas Rory has announced that he's stopping and hasn't re-signed for anybody, I didn't say it to anybody. And I think I knew in my head sort of 90%, but not 100%. I went out with the last chance saloon to go and try and win, actually. And I have to say for me, it was to go out and win. So I retired 2 weeks too early. We got knocked out in a quarter-final. I wanted to get to a final and win a final. And so I was pretty peeved at the end of it. But I loved it. I loved it, actually. And I seemed to relish every second of that tour. I got to meet a lot of Australian people, which kind of doesn't sound like something that you would do, but I wasn't a great sleeper at that stage. So I would get up at 5:30 in the morning, go down to the surf club on the beach and talk to the old guys that were retired or semi-retired. And, I asked, could I join them for a while? And they just lagged me off for about 3 weeks on Terrigal. It was fantastic. And I was trying to soak up everything that was there in it. But, and it's funny because you're asking me a question, and it's like a personal question, and it's trying to take the view as you as a player. As a captain, even as a player, I don't know that you take it in that fashion. You have to take it for the team. As a captain, your view is, what can you do to make it best? What can you do to make the team succeed, or to push it a bit further, or to do whatever it is? And I hadn't played a full game of rugby in over 12 months. By the time I went, I played a couple of warm-up games for Munster, a couple for Ireland. It was about getting match sharp and getting ready so that you could play it. And the manner in which our games fell was perfect. So it fell against Romania, and so you get really battle-hardened in a game against guys who live for scrummaging. And I played about 50 minutes of that, 60 minutes in a match against Namibia, and then I played the full match against Argentina. So we had an easier run-in where you could kind of peak a little bit later. And it was. I mean, I loved it, and I use the word cherish because I knew it, even though nobody else knew it, or maybe they thought they did. And I mean, I had an argument with Charlie McQueen from the Examiner, and every now and then he'd say, "Woody, is this going to be your last game?" And he'd say it in every training, so every time we'd press conferences, and we'd a couple a week, and all the time coming up to it. And eventually I said, "Shut up, Charlie. Just give it a rest, will you? You'll be the first to know when I do hang up my boots." But I said, that's not a discussion for it, because I didn't want, and Rory has done it differently, but I didn't want, this is my last time playing in Cardiff. This is my last time playing in Lansdowne Road. This is the last sort of thing. I think that deflects a little bit from the idea of team. And so for me, I wasn't comfortable with saying it. And the truth of it is, I announced I was retiring, and Marcus Horn said to my wife, "Is that true?" And she said, "Well, I don't know, because we've never had that discussion." And I didn't have the discussion. I didn't want to think about retirement. I wanted to think about the next game. And Actually, the first time it really struck home, and this isn't I didn't want to believe it. I'd had a little chat with Fabien Galtier before the French game, and I started kind of, the thought came into my head, and I didn't say it at the time, but the thought came into my head, it was him or me that was probably going to retire today, you know. And but 10 minutes before the end of that game, that quarterfinal, and we were soundly beaten by France. It's when your last game is a low point, it makes it very tough. But last 10 minutes, I said, "This is it. I'm not going to play anymore." And I said, I better try and do something right for the last 10 minutes. And that was the only time I really thought of it in pure clarity, as in this was definite. Because the truth of it for me was I wanted it to be an extra 2 weeks. So I wasn't retiring that day. I was only retiring the last 10 minutes when we were beaten. And I came off the field afterwards and actually did say the line I had thought earlier on, and said it was either you or me today.
Was it a conscious choice to enjoy it more because you knew this was it?
The truth of it is, for me, for the last 2 or 3 years of my career, I wanted to enjoy it more. I felt that I'd had a lot of surgery. I loved it. I loved the training sessions, you know, the team room, the crack at the team room, the sense of doing something together, going on tour together, building up a World Cup together, trying to help prepare a team for things like that, trying to get my own game back. I hadn't played, and trying to make certain I played well and didn't leave myself or the teammates down. That's a big deal. And it was a concerted effort to say, well, I know it's going to stop, you know. But I wasn't saying that publicly. But I had spoken to my shoulder surgeon, Bailey, in London, and a great guy. And he just said, look, because I had 3 operations to play in that World Cup, and he said after the second one, the third one was on my elbow, but after the second one, he just said, it's fine, but are you going to stop after the World Cup? And so I said, yeah, it's a good chance that I'll stop after the World Cup. I didn't want to admit it. And he had said, well, look, you need to. Actually, as I walked to the press conference after the final game, I rang him and left a message on him just to say, listen, I'm pulling the plug.
And so I completely understand the not telling everybody publicly and not wanting the Keith Woods last time at this ground and at that ground circus, and that's self-explanatory. Not telling your wife is very interesting. Not telling people in the dressing room is very interesting. Is it like that any part of you didn't want to admit the end was coming because you were worried it might affect your performance in any way if you said it out loud? What was your thinking there, do you think, at the time?
No, I didn't want to. I don't think it was the lack of performance. The pressure on to play is to perform at the highest level you can all the time. And look, in my time, we didn't win with Ireland. You know, and this was a chance. I thought we had actually a chance. And Australia got to the final and drew the final, and they beat us by a point. So we did have a chance. We were in a position in which to do it. And that game was a huge game for us, because if we beat Australia at that stage, we had an easier route with Scotland, not France. And that was, you know, there's an element of luck and there's an element of bad luck and bad decisions and all those sort of things that happen. But I wasn't retiring that morning. That wasn't the conversation. I was playing because we were going to play in a semi-final the following week.
No, sure, but why not tell anyone that you were retiring at the end of the World Cup? Anyone?
Because I had no interest in talking about it. I was 90% certain I was, but I always think you deal with the reality, not the sort of hypothetical.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have that conversation. I didn't want to get it to a point of that this is part of the story, you know, this is part of the build-up. That's rubbish. You know, you don't play for people. You play for the sense of team and that philosophy and all that. But you can't really hang your hat on saying, let's play this one for Woody, or let's play this for Drico or stuff like that. That's a hard card to make. You maybe can pull that card once. the truth of it is you're playing for the team and you're playing to win.
We have the clip of you on RTE then after the French defeat. Here you are.
Yeah, very disappointing. I don't know, we just didn't play in the first half. It's really disappointing, but I think we can hold our heads up. We tried very hard in the second half and we tried very hard.
You had 2 very tough games. Did that take too much out of you?
I don't think we're making excuses. We tried our damnedest out there, just it didn't come up. I think our first half let us down. It was the worst we've played maybe in the tournament, but and it was almost an impossible task after that, but we did try, we did put everything into it.
And is the emotion there more so this is me over, or more so I'm bloody disgusted we haven't won that game?
I think both. I'm an emotional fish, there's no doubt about that, and it meant, I have to say, playing for your country is absolutely phenomenal, and captaining your country is phenomenal, and it was a huge part of my life. I mean, that was pretty much the end of 12 years of a lot of hard work, sweat, 10 operations, lots of different injuries, all that sort of stuff. And look, as I said, that's the end of my rugby career, and you never to play again, and that's of course it's emotional. But we got so many things wrong in that game, and it was amazing. I remember on that day, and it's funny, I can think of this clearly, and I don't watch matches back. I watched an odd couple of things because of my boys from time to time, but I'm not a big watcher of the stuff back. But my memory of that day is very clear, that every pass that France threw that day hit the fingers at perfect reach, never slowed down once, and they exposed, we brought in a different defensive setup for that game, and they exposed it ruthlessly. And we were gone out of the game after 20 minutes. And then you're getting down to that horrible expression, but trying to play for a bit of pride. And we did that. In fairness, we did do it. And we were blown away by a team who were phenomenal on that day. But no, I was emotional because it's a lot of dreams are broken then. You get emotional when that happens.
It is worth saying that Australia went on. They beat Scotland double scores in that quarter-final as well, and you were within a point of them. So that 0-3, it's not just revisionism or delusion to say it was a bit of a chance to do something, which sticks.
It was. I mean, we had a mixture of a team, and we were a very good team. And on that tour, we operated as a very good team. We had we didn't have the balance of the team like we have now. We didn't have a strength and depth like we have now. We had a lot of players, which I would have said played above their standard, which is all you can ever wish for when you go on a World Cup. And it was a lot of really young guys. So you're talking Rog and Stringer were only in the game a couple of years, 2 or 3 years in that international game. A lot of young guys in there, and I think they learned an awful lot from it. I know I've spoken to Drico about it, and he loved it. He enjoyed it as a tour. And we seemed to strike some of the right balance with it. That yes, we trained hard, but we didn't overtrain on it. And it was, I'd like to have gone a bit further. That's 2 weeks too early.
I was reading a piece from the Times. So Rory Best will have this experience. Hopefully, it's maybe after a final as opposed to a quarter-final. But he will have the experience of waking up the next morning. There was a swim recovery session which had been downgraded to optional, I think, after the defeat. What does a retired old hacker do when he wakes up that morning?
Yeah, well, I went down for the swim session, and there was one other player in the pool with a fairly substantial hangover, and we were the only two. So he was confused and didn't get the memo, and I obviously was like a preconditioned animal to go to the pool afterwards, and we had a bit of a press conference again in the hotel, and it was actually lovely. A lot of the guys from the press and the media that you get to know over a long period of time too, and it was different times, but cracked open a bottle of champagne, and we had a little sip and a bit of a chat and told a few old stories. It was yeah.
I sense, not that you're here to offer Rory best advice, clearly, but just listening to what you've well, exactly. I mean, that's the other thing when you're on the plane, and at least all this becomes a bit further away. I know in 03 it wasn't 2 clicks on your phone away, but at least it's a bit further away for them. But reading between the lines, I sense you've no regrets about going out there to enjoy Australia in 03 and lap it up and try and soak it in as well as doing your best. That's kind of the perfect balance for someone in Best's very curious situation.
Well, I think there's a couple of elements. As captain, there's a variety of different things you have to do on a week. I would be saying try and limit your press conferences, because they're only going to ask you the same questions all the time, and share the load with other people. There's no harm in that. Get away from everybody if you can, and have a little bit of time to yourself. There's an awful lot going on, and he's been under a bit of pressure, and yet he came back through that on the weekend and played much better. He has undoubted pedigree. He only has a few more miles in the clock, so he's going to use those, and Joe will use those as judiciously as possible to maximise what we can get out of him. And I don't want to sound too callous with that, but that's exactly what he wants. He wants to get the last amount of rugby out of him over the next few weeks. He wants to be able to do that. But for me, I liked the idea of not thinking and talking rugby every minute. So I wanted to do different things. I brought a load of books with me down to Australia. I kept going out to the beach in Terrigal. There's a little headland around the corner, sitting out there just reading books and stuff. I didn't want to be rugby every second, because I think I did that too much earlier on in my career, where you're almost burnt out by the time you get out in the field. So how he manages his energy, how Joe manages him, could be key for us in the next few weeks. But I would also say it's the last throw of the dice for Rory. It's a pretty high privilege to be on the world stage. It's a pretty amazing thing to do in your life, and he's done it a few times, and this will be the last time he does it. So he wants to enjoy it and soak it up, and it's trying to get that balance between the emotion right, so that emotion doesn't spill into over arousal and it affects his performance. Now you played the bit for me, almost sobbing on the RTE bit at the end. That was the time for the emotion to come out. Yeah, been holding an awful lot of that in play, and that I think would be my nature anyway. And when it comes out, it comes out. That's fine.
We're done to Keith Wood. We're here with thanks to Vodafone, team of us, everyone in our rugby coverage. Before we go then, some thoughts on the Welsh game. Rory O'Connor was in here on Monday, and he did make the very fair point. If we were going to get worried by Twickenham the other week and take a lot out of Twickenham and read into Twickenham, then equally you have to read a little bit into the weekend, which was much better. What did you read into it? What did you take from that performance?
Well, to take Rory's point, I worried about certain parts of Twickenham. I worried about the lack of line speed, the lack of wanting to get involved in dominant tackles and dominant carries, because I really didn't like the fact we didn't do that, because that's exactly what England did to us 6 months ago. So I did like in the first game against Wales that we were the ones that were off the line, but Wales were like we were the previous week. And then on the weekend, I just felt we were more composed. There is a comfort blanket when Johnny goes into 10, and even though he hasn't played a huge amount of rugby, there's a sense of security. You can see it in the other players around him. You can see how other players go up. I thought Henshaw played really, really well. So I thought we moved the ball a little bit more, but I felt we moved it with intent. So we were coming onto the ball. I think Dave Kilcoyne has... It's one of my big bugbears for this Irish team, is that we tend to carry the ball into contact, to recycle it, to do something in a while. Under no circumstances can Dave Kilcoyne do that. He's like a ever-ready bunny. He's just running like a mad thing. He's getting over the gain line. He's making as big a hits as he possibly can. He's putting down the marker. For me, he put down a marker for what you'd expect from a lot of the forwards, between himself and James Ryan. And again, for me, James Ryan is comfort for the other players. The guy is phenomenal. And I don't take too much out of the game. I think we won it. I think that's great. I think it's important that we got a win. I love the fact that we did it incredibly pragmatically at a couple of times. Pick and go, pick and go, pick and go. And I know that Gatland criticised that and kind of bemoaned that. Do what you do to win. And so I was very happy because we mixed it up very well.
Yeah.
And I think we showed a couple of things, but we didn't show our hand. And I think there is more in there. I just like the fact that we're further down the line. And if I was to be, look, I've said this a couple of weeks ago, my level of excitement about warm-up games is nearly exactly zero. I just want, like all the players do, they want to get on the plane and get out there. Those games are to try and make certain that they get picked into the test team as quickly as they possibly can, and they get up to match sharpness as quick as they can. It's guys on the periphery who are trying to get in there. That's their only chance, and that's tough.
Yeah. One last one on the Irish midfield. It's kind of been up for discussion last couple of days. Ronan O'Gara was on Sunday, the day after the game, and nobody can predict what Joe Schmidt's going to do really with any certainty, but he was saying if he was picking the Irish midfield at this stage, it would be Aki and Henshaw, and Ringrose, I suppose, next man in off the bench. What's your read on that?
I would nearly deign to follow Raj in that one. I'm not a huge Aki fan, but because I often think he looks to offload when it isn't on, and at times he gets caught out of position and he's very excited. And I'm going to say that was in the past tense, because what we have actually seen from him in the last month, I think he has shed weight. I think he looks buzzing on the ground. He looks incredibly focused. And for me, the pairing with, I'm a huge Robbie Henshaw fan. I think he's fantastic. So I would go for that pairing too. And I'm a bit disappointed for Ringrose, because I'm a big fan of Ringrose. And I just think he seems to have been a little bit off it. I don't know why. And sometimes that happens. But equally well, when you have a guy that has class and quality like he has, we're going to need 3 and 4 of them anyway.
Sure.
So what you want him to do is say, okay, things haven't gone perfectly for me. How do I out-train these guys? How do I put my hand up for selection? If I get 20 minutes, because it's going to happen for different reasons, how do I get 20 minutes if he's not selected? How do I get 20 minutes, and how do I make certain I'm picked the next day? He is one of the guys that can actually dust himself off and do that. So do you know what? I think there's a bounty of riches we never say that. And I know we get nervous when you see it, because guys are only operating at half pace because they've trained all that week, and we worry. Of course, we're supporters. We're a nation of supporting warriors. We feel every hit, every knock on, everything that goes. But that's the joy of rugby, especially of international rugby. But I would also say, you go to a World Cup. Some people may only go to one in their whole life. They may get to 2, maybe get to 3. But it is such a huge thing. It is the biggest thing. And all you want is that sense of support, and the kind of partisan Munster, Leinster, Ulster, Connacht thing just has to go out the window. It's guys in the green for Ireland, and you want to try and support them to the hilt, because even though it might only be a couple of clicks away, the players do pick up on it. They do read it. They do hear it. We want to challenge everything, but we also want them to go well. We want them to deliver for their jersey.
Sure. Look, with Johnny Sexton here on Monday, you can only want someone like that to go well, because it's mad. As you said, you might only get to 1, and Sexton was in here and he was making the point. Well, he's been to 2 others, and for 2 different reasons, one being injury, the other being Ronan O'Gara and that belligerence to never let go in 2011. He's never started a quarter-final. You just think, and that shows how you need stuff to line up for you in a big way. And as to the Ringrose point, I suppose if the Irish midfield, and this applies probably to the back row as well, where there are dilemmas, has taught us anything, injuries are absolutely 1,000% inevitable.
I think we actually have. I think we have a very good team. I think we have a very good coach. I would like to know that there's a lot more in the locker. And we have extra things to do for different times and different situations. But I can't get away from the fact that this World Cup could come down to injury or yellow and red cards. So we need to make certain. The only things we can be in control of, and this is tough now, and it's tough because of the way World Rugby are looking at all the injuries and all the tackles and people ducking and not. And I agree with them, by the way. But there still is an element of doubt, and there still is difficulty in trying to make certain those tackles are absolutely legit. So there's an element of luck involved in this too.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of teams that are knocking on the table. So we can see a route, but the big blockage comes quarterfinal, be it South Africa and New Zealand. So I think we need to dream the dream for the next while.
Okay. Listen, thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Pleasure. Cheers, Joe.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.